Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo 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 Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
We are reading from Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, chapter 11, Swayambhavu. Swayambhuva Manu advises Dhruva Maharaja to stop fighting. Text 22, right?
23.
3.
We finished 22 yesterday.
Okay. Avyaktasya prameyasya
Avyaktasya prameyasya
Nana Shakti Udayasya cha
Nana Shakti Udayasya cha
Navai Chikirshikam Tata
Navai Chikirshitata
Ko Vedata Swasambhavam.
Ko Vedata Swasambhavam.
Absolute true transcendence is never subject to the understanding of imperfect sensory endeavor, nor is he subject to direct experience. He is the master of varieties of energies, like the full material energy, and no one can understand his plans or actions. Therefore, it should be concluded that although he is the original cause of all causes, no one can know him by mental speculation. Prabhu writes, question may be raised, since there are so many varieties of philosophers theorizing in different ways, which of them is correct? The answer is that the absolute truth, transcendence, is never subject to direct experience or mental speculation. The mental speculator may be called Dr. Frog. The story is that a frog in a 3-foot well wanted to calculate the length and breadth of the Atlantic Ocean on the basis of his knowledge of his own well, but it was an impossible task for Dr. Frog. Similarly, Prabhupada says a person may be a great academician, scholar or professor, but he cannot speculate and expect to understand the absolute truth, for his senses are limited. So then what is it? The cause of all causes, the absolute truth, can be known from the absolute truth himself, and not by an ascending process to reach him.
23rd, 4/11/23.
So now he gives the analogy of the sky. When the sun is not visible at night, or when it is covered by a cloud in the day, it is not possible to uncover it either by bodily or mental strength or by scientific instruments, although the sun is there in the sky. No one can say that he has discovered a torchlight so powerful that if one goes on a roof and focuses the torchlight on the night sky, the sun will then be seen. He's making such a joke, no? There is no such torchlight, nor is it possible. The word avyakta, unmanifested, in this verse indicates that absolute truth cannot be manifested by any strain of so-called scientific advancement of knowledge. This is the important point. Transcendence is not the subject matter of direct experience. Okay. The absolute truth may be known in the same way as the sun covered by the cloud or covered by night, for when the sun rises in the morning, on its own way, when everyone can see the sun, everyone can see the world, and everyone can see himself. This understanding of self-realization is called Atma Tattva. Unless, however, one comes to this point of understanding Atma Tattva, one remains in the darkness in which he was born. So, continuing on, Prabhupada goes, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Dadami Buddhi Yogantam, the Lord says, I give him intelligence. What is that intelligence? Yena Mam Ubayantite. The Lord gives one the intelligence to cross over the ocean nescience and come back home, back to Godhead. In conclusion, the cause of all causes, the absolute truth of Supreme Brahman, cannot be understood by philosophical speculation, but he reveals himself to his devotee because the devotee fully surrenders onto his lotus feet. And then finally he says, if any unintelligent man wants to know what God is, he should study this transcendental literature under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. That is very easy to understand Krishna as he is. You can't do it any other way. You can't try to, like you say, you can't even see him unless the Lord reveals himself. Okay, text 24. May they read, Prabhu? 10.
न चैते पुत्रका भ्रातुर् हन्तारो धनधानुगाः विसर्गादानयोस्ताता पुंसो दैवं हि कारणम्.
My dear son, those yakshas who are descendants of Kuvera are not actually the killers of your brother. The birth and death of every living entity are caused by the Supreme, who is certainly the cause of all causes. Text 25.
स एव विश्वं सृजति स एवावति हन्ति च अतापि अनहङ्कारान् नाज्यते गुणकर्मभिः.
Supreme Personality of Godhead creates this material world, maintains it, and annihilates it in due course of time, but because he is transcendental to such activities, he is never affected by ego in such action or by the modes of material nature. Basically, Swambhu Manu is talking about the cause of all causes is who? Krishna. So different, he's explaining in different way. And also the Lord has no ego like us. Okay, ours is false ego. Or as Prabhupada writes here, anahankara means without ego. He is ego. The Lord is ego. The Lord is himself. He is everything actually. But in this case, it's not like ego in the sense that we identify with something. He doesn't do like that. Okay? So therefore Prabhupada compares it. The conditioned soul has a false ego, and as a result of his karma he gets different types of bodies in this material world. Sometimes he gets the body of a demigod and he thinks the body to be his identity. Similarly, when he gets the body of a dog, he identifies his self with that body. But for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no such distinction between the body and the soul. Right? It's the same. Okay. So he is not affected by anything, not by the material nature. So therefore he says, Na mam karmani limpanti, na me karma phale spriha. Okay? There's no work that affects me, he says. Nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. That's the difference between him and us. We get confused by everything. And again, remember he says to Arjuna in the 4th chapter that you don't remember, but I remember. Yeah. So, same thing. So he doesn't change body anyway, right? Whereas we all change. We keep changing. Every birth we take, we forget our previous birth. Then we try to enjoy the new situation. Prabhupada says the real situation, however, is that the body of the conditioned soul, even if he has a large accumulation of material goodness, is material. Whereas Krishna's body is never material. It is transcendental. Krishna has no false ego, for he does not identify himself with the false and temporary body. So that's the difference. We do. He doesn't. His body is always eternal. Even when he takes avatar, he comes in his own transcendental form. Parambhavam. Own transcendental form. Whereas we are in a different situation. Okay. Check something. Right. Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishwaropi san. Kritim samadhistaya samyami atmamani. So that's the difference between Krishna and all of us. His body is transcendental, never deteriorates, and he comes every millennium in his original form. Text 26.
एष भूतानि भूतात्मा भूतेषु भूतभावनः स्वशक्तया मायया युक्तः सृजति अत्ति च पाति च.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the super soul of all living entities. He is the controller and maintainer of everyone. Through the agency of his external energy, he creates, maintains and annihilates everyone. So he has the spiritual manifestation and material, right? Aham sarvasya. So he has both material and spiritual. He creates both. But only the material creation is temporary. Right? He creates and then he destroys, creates and destroys. So therefore, he creates, maintains and annihilates everyone in that sense.
Material contact.
Material. So and then he's expanded everywhere. Remember we talked about it. All living things are on me, but I'm not in everyone. So as Brahma Jyoti or Brahman, he's everywhere. Everything is in that. So it is part of his aspect of being the Supreme Lord. So everything is in Brahman. So we are in him in that sense. At the same time, we are not in him means he, as Bhagavan, he is in the spiritual world, in his planet, like that. So that way he says, I'm not everywhere as Bhagavan, but he is actually everywhere. He's personally always, Prabhupada says, in the spiritual world. That's his personality. But with his impersonal potency, he's everywhere. And Prabhupada says, if you are worshipping the Lord in the temple, and if it's like Prabhupada established a temple, he's a pure devotee, therefore that place is actually like spiritual.
So it says so, but I'm not everywhere.
Yeah.
But he says every atom has.
Yeah.
Here the Vishnu.
Personally, as the Supreme Lord, he is not everywhere.
Oh, okay.
But as his expansion is everywhere. Text 27.
तमेव मृत्युम् अमृतं तात दैवम् सर्वात्मनोपेहि जगत् Parayanam
Sarvatmano Vehi Jagatparayanam
Yasmai Balim Vishvasrujo Haranti
Yasmai Balim Vishvasrujo Haranti
Gavo Yatavaina Siddhama Yantritaha
Gavo Yatavaina Siddhama Yantritaha.
My dear boy Dhruva, please surrender onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate goal of the progress of the world. Everyone, including the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, is working under his control, just as a bull prompted by a rope in its nose is controlled by its owner. Even a bull is very powerful, but because its nose is so sensitive, if you hit the ring there and pull, it will just follow. It's controlled. So in that way, everyone is controlled by the Lord's energy or the Lord directly. So here is his grandfather, Swayambhu Manu, was wanting him to stop the fighting, because he was doing it for it became a personal vendetta rather than for the righteousness, for dharma. Therefore he wants that to stop. So Prabhupada writes in this verse, therefore Swayambhu Manu seeks to eradicate the last tinge of false ambition in Dhruva by explaining the position of the Supreme Controller. The words Mrityum Amritam, death and immortality, are significant. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, I am ultimate death who takes away everything from the demons. The demons' business is to continually struggle for existence as lords over material nature. Demons repeatedly meet death after death and create a network of involvement in the material world. The Lord is death for the demons, but for devotees He is Amrita, eternal life. And that's a fact, right? If you do transcendental service, then as I said the other day, you are living. If you are doing material thing, then you are getting ready to die. That's the difference. So therefore, when you do service all the time, you are assured of immortality, which means you get a transcendental body. Service here is non-different from service in the spiritual world. One is, like Prabhupada gives the example, green mango, and then in the spiritual world is ripe mango. That's the difference. Same thing, only the satisfaction is increased. So they will simply change their material bodies for spiritual bodies. Okay. Whereas the demons, they have to get new material bodies and go through the cycle of birth and death again. So therefore the Lord is both death and immortality at the same time. Death for demons and immortality for devotees. And so Swayambhu Manu wants him to surrender to that personality. And then another thing Prabhupada puts forward is, one may put forward the argument, why are the demigods worshipped? The answer is given here that the demigods are worshipped by less intelligent men. The demigods themselves accept sacrifices for the ultimate satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay?
Prabhu, I have one question. So right now Dhruva Maharaj is actually pure devotee, right?
Yeah.
And from even Vishnu said at the end of the life. So then how come he has this false ambition? Is it like he's covered by illusion, like how Arjuna is covered, or?
I would say so, yeah, because he got carried away by his emotions. Still he is interacting with the material nature as a king and so on, so there will be some reaction here. Even a pure devotee, even he is interacting some way with the material nature. There is some...
So this he really didn't do 100% for the Lord. There is something for him. Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't doing it for the Lord. He was doing it because he was attached to his younger brother. He was 28.
यः पञ्चवर्षो जननीं त्वं विहाय
पञ्चवर्षो जननीं त्वं विहाय
मातुः सपत्न्या वचसा भिन्नवर्मा
मातुः सपत्न्या वचसा भिन्नवर्मा
वनं गतस्तपसा प्रत्यगक्षम्
वनगतस्तपसा प्रत्यगक्षम्
आराध्य देदे मूर्ध्नि पदं त्रिलोक्यः
आराध्य देदे मूर्ध्नि पदं त्रिलोक्यः.
My dear Dhruva, at the age of only 5 years, you were very grievously afflicted by the words of your mother's co-wife, and you very boldly gave up the protection of your mother and went to the forest to engage in the yogic process for realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As a result of this, you have already achieved the topmost position in all the three worlds. Basically, he wants him to stop the fighting, don't continue being angry, surrender to the Supreme Lord. You've already done that, all that. So what are you trying to prove now? There's nothing else for you to prove, actually. He's already a surrendered soul. So why are you doing this? Next 29.
तमेनमङ्गात्मनि मुक्तविग्रहे व्यपाश्रितं निर्गुणमेकमक्षरम् आत्मानमन्विच्छ विमुक्तमात्मदृग् यस्मिन्निदं भेदमसत् प्रतीयते.
My dear Dhruva, please therefore turn your attention to the Supreme Person who is the infallible Brahman. Face the Supreme Personality of Godhead in your original position, and thus, by self-realization, you will find this material differentiation to be merely flickering. In the paragraph after the verse, Prabhu writes, the devotee is already liberated, that means he is not affected by the modes of material nature, does not see differentiation in terms of the outward body. He sees all living entities as spirit souls, eternal servants of the Lord. Dhruva Maharaj was advised by Lord Manu to see with that vision. He was specifically advised to do so because he was a great devotee and should not have looked upon other living entities with ordinary vision. Indirectly, Manu pointed out to Dhruva Maharaj that out of material affection, Dhruva thought of his brother as his kin and the yakshas as his enemies. Okay? Such observations of differentiation subsides as soon as one is situated in his original position as an eternal servant of the Lord. So you can be a pure devotee also, but still when you are actively interacting with the material nature, you can also be covered to some extent. So his affection for his brother covered his, it created anger in him and covered his thinking. When you're angry, you can't think straight.
Just like Arjuna was momentarily covered during battle.
Arjuna was covered due to bodily identification and he got bewildered. Here he became angry, Dhruva Maharaj. So there's a difference, slight difference.
The anger is not because of bodily identification.
Well, yeah. But that one is more family.
Okay.
He wasn't angry, right?
Just compassion.
He wasn't angry. Arjuna became very
Compassion.
material, mundane compassion. Like
Enjoyment.
Prabhupada was saying. Whereas here, he lost somebody, so he got angry. The other case, he didn't lose anybody. He didn't want to lose. So he became more morose and he didn't want to fight. So here he became angry. So it can affect us even though we may be doing pure devotional service. For us, easily we get affected.
Once in a while we don't.
Yeah. But for the personality like Dhruva, it was because of the intensity of that, the whole thing. Somebody died and he was covered. But at the same time, remember earlier on Srila Prabhupada mentions that this could be also part of the Lord's
Plan.
desire, not Leela. It's not Lord's Leela. That his desire, because some of the yakshas may be,
Eliminated.
Yeah.
due to their past karma, they may have to be killed like that. Yeah. Text 30.
त्वं प्रत्यगात्मनि तथा भगवति अनन्ता आनन्दमात्र उपपन्न समस्तशक्तौ भक्तिं विधाय परमां शनकैरविद्या ग्रन्थिं बिभेत्स्यसि भ्रन्तिं बिभेत्स्यसि ममाहम् इति प्रारुधम्
Thus regaining your natural position and rendering service unto the Supreme Lord, who is the all-powerful reservoir of all pleasure and who lives in all living entities as the Supersoul, you will very soon forget the illusory understanding of I and my. So, same thing, he's identifying. And so, he's told not to identify anymore. If he were to focus back with his relationship with Krishna, then immediately he will be understand that he's doing wrong. Text 31.
संयच्चरोषं भद्रं ते प्रदीपं श्रेयसां परं श्रुतेन भूयसा राजन् अगदेनाय यथामयम्.
My dear king, just consider what I have said to you, which will act as medicinal treatment upon disease. Control your anger, for anger is the foremost enemy on the path of spiritual realization. I wish all good fortune for you. Please follow my instructions. So this is the reason why he is not able to focus properly, because we know, right, while contemplating the senses,
We develop desire,
attachment develops. Then from attachment, lust.
anger.
When lust is frustrated,
When lust is frustrated,
get anger,
anger.
Turns into
When anger becomes predominant,
comes Radha.
bewilderment of
When
memory,
intelligence is lost,
And
when
intelligence
is lost.
and then when intelligence is lost, you don't know what to do. Okay, you don't know what to do. So therefore, Dhruva was in that situation, and Swayambhu Manu is trying to make him understand that this is not correct. Now he is the king, and obviously he should get angry to do his duties as a king when he goes on battle and so on. So therefore there's nothing wrong with that. But then here the problem was, if he had just killed the yaksha who killed his brother, that would have been okay. But he got really angry when they all came in a big army, and then he killed, and then he went to the city, and then he started to kill the people there also. The Prabhupada writes, when the challenge came, Dhruva Maharaj fought vehemently and punished the yakshas sufficiently, which means that was okay. But anger is such that if one increases it, it increases unlimitedly. In order that Dhruva Maharaj's kingly anger not exceed the limit, Manu was kind enough to check his grandson. Dhruva Maharaj could understand the purpose of his grandfather, and he immediately stopped the fighting. The words Srutena Bhuyasha by constantly hearing are very important in this verse. By constantly hearing about devotional service, one can check the force of anger, which is detrimental to the process of devotional service. So therefore, to check anger, you should
Here.
Here.
hear what?
Devotional.
Devotional things, not some nonsense. So you're angry, you hear nonsense, you become more
Angry.
angry, more nonsense. So constantly hear about devotional service, chanting, Krishna service, Gopi service, all of that. Constantly hear. Hear about Prabhupada's pastimes, lectures like that. So if you do that daily, you'll find that your intelligence becomes sharpened, so that you can stop yourself from getting angry. I was with one devotee today, and he was saying like that. He said initially he will get very angry, and then he will react when he gets angry, and then after that he will regret. And he said nowadays it's like, then he said it happened that he knows he shouldn't get angry, but then he got angry, and then now it's like he gets that ability to like stop himself, but he's still worried that he'll explode. But this is the solution. Constantly hearing about the devotional service. Right? So you should hear about the Lord's pastime. Particularly, you should hear the which one? Krishna book.
Krishna book.
Easy to hear Krishna book. Alright? Not so much demanding on your intellect.
Easy.
It's true. If the same pastimes you take care of chanted, the whole thing you chant, I don't think you all can handle it. You know, you will like when they stop. And but if you hear the Krishna book, is so much fluent. You know? Prabhupada weaves through the pastime and the philosophy in such a pleasant way, and it's easy to appreciate what he's trying to say. Yeah. So hearing helps us maintain our balance in also life, you know, because by more you hear, the more your intelligence will become sharp. Yeah, and therefore it helps you make good decisions. Sometimes we think why we can't make a good decision. It's because we can't have a focused mind, you know. Samadona vidyate. If it's too many things in the brain, then you can't focus. You can't come to a good, proper conclusion. Like Radha, Krishna, Govinda. He's always got 10 million things in his mind. He's always running around something, which is usually devotional, but still, you know, you have to focus like Arjuna did. So Prabhupada then qualifies, because some people will say then he shouldn't have got angry. And he said no, he's becoming angry with the yakshas is okay, it's appropriate, it's acceptable. So then he gives the story of the Narad Muni and the snake. I think you all have heard of this. There's a short story in this connection about a snake who became a devotee upon instruction by Narada, who instructed him not to bite anymore. Since ordinarily a snake's business is to fatally bite other living entities, as a devotee he was forbidden to do so. So he took initiation from Narada. So then Narada told him, you can't bite. And he said, okay. Unfortunately, people took advantage of this non-violence on the part of the snake, especially the children who began to throw stones at him. He did not bite anyone. However, because it was the instruction of his spiritual master. So the people, you know, when you see snake, generally they will try to kill it if it's a poisonous snake. So these children saw this snake wasn't biting, so they start throwing stones. And children are like that, and they can be very cruel sometimes, right? Which is it?
Not me.
Oh, really? After a while, when the snake met his spiritual master, Narada, he complained, I have given up the bad habit of biting innocent living entities, but they are mistreating me by throwing stones at me. Upon hearing this, Narada Muni instructed him, don't bite, But do not forget to expand your hood as if you are going to bite. Then they will go away. Similarly, a devotee is always non-violent. He is qualified with all good characteristics. But in the common world, when there is mischief made by others, he should not forget to become angry, at least for the time being, in order to drive away the miscreants.
So here it's like, he wants to show as if he's angry, not like coming under the modes and becoming angry, losing intelligence.
That's exactly what Prabhupada is trying to tell us. He could have just fought one or two and then shown the yakshas that he means business and then go away. But he lost it. Anyway, it's a lesson for us to learn. Guru Maharaj's episode here is for us to understand what anger can cause in the long run. You can't take back. Right? When you get angry and say something, you cannot eat it back. It doesn't work that way. You can't make people forget what you say.
येनोपसृष्टात् पुरुषान् लोको विजते वृषम् नाभूदस्तद्वशं गच्छेत् इच्छन् अभयमात्मनः.
A person who desires liberation from this material world should not fall under the control of anger, because when bewildered by anger, one becomes a source of dread for all others. So people will look down, they'll say, oh, that guy is always an angry guy. I don't want to talk to him. You talk to him, he'll explode, right? So people avoid. So Prabhupada says, if you are a devotee or a saintly person, but you're always angry, nobody wants to associate with you. But it shouldn't be like that, because you're supposed to help them in their devotional life. But if you're an angry person, who wants to come and take your association? Right? So Prabhupada says, if one treats others with non-enmity, then no one will become his enemy. There is the example, however, of Jesus Christ, who had enemies and they crucified him. The demonic are always present and they find fault even in saintly persons. But a saintly person never becomes angry, even if there is very great provocation. Text 33.
हेलनं गिरिशभ्रातुर् धनदस्य त्वया कृतं यज्जग्निवान् पुण्यजनान् भ्रातृगृह्णान् इति अमर्षितः.
My dear Dhruva, you thought that the Yakshas killed your brother and therefore you have killed great numbers of them. But by this action you have agitated the mind of Lord Shiva's brother Kuvera, who is the treasurer of the demigods. Please note that your actions have been very disrespectful to Kuvera and Lord Shiva.
And I take back.
Okay, so they are not ordinary men, all these Yakshas also, because they belong to Kuvera and they are under Lord Shiva's protection. So here Manu is saying Dhruva has offended Shiva and Kuvera. So somehow or other he needs to pacify Kuvera. Text 34.
Tam prasadaya vatsashu sannatya prasharayoktivihi nayavan mahatam tejaha kulam no bhivavishyati.
For this reason, my son, you should immediately pacify Kuvera with gentle words and prayers, and thus his wrath may not affect our family. So whatever action we do, people shouldn't get angry with us or curse us or things like that. So we should be very careful how we deal, even with ordinary people. Text 35.
Evam swayambhuvah pautram anushasyamanurdhruvam तेनाभिवन्दितः शाखम् ऋषिभिः स्वपुरं ययौ.
Thus, Swayambhu Manu, after giving instructions to Dhruva Maharaj, his grandson, received respectful obeisances from him, and Lord Manu and the great sages went back to their respective homes. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 11th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Swayambhuva Manu advises Dhruva Maharaj to stop fighting. Chapter 12. Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Godhead. Text 1.
मैत्रेय उवाच ध्रुवं निवृत्तं प्रतिबुद्धय वैशसात् अपेतमन्युं भगवान् धनेश्वरः त्रागतश्चारणयक्षकिन्नरैः संस्तूयमानोऽन्यवधत् कृताञ्जलिम्.
The great sage Maitreya said, "My dear Vidura, Dhruva Maharaj's anger subsided and he completely ceased killing yakshas. And Kuvera, the most blessed master, the treasurer, learned this news. He appeared before Dhruva. While being worshipped by yakshas, kinnaras and charanas, he spoke to Dhruva Maharaj, who stood before him with folded hands."
धनद उवाच भो भोः क्षत्रियधायात् परितुष्टोऽस्मि तेन यत्त्वं पितामहाद्देशात् वैरं दुष्टयजम् अत्यजः.
Master of the treasury Kuvera said, "O sinless son of a Kshatriya, I am very glad to know that under the instruction of your grandfather you have given up your enmity. Although it is very difficult to avoid, I am very pleased with you."
न भवान् अवधीद् यक्षान् न यक्षा भ्रातरं तव काल एव हि भूतानां प्रभुरपयय भावयोः.
Actually, you have not killed the yakshas, nor have they killed your brother, for the ultimate cause of generation and annihilation is the eternal time feature of the Supreme Lord. So here also he is saying, just like Swayambhu Manu say, due to one's karma, in due course of time, everyone will die also. Yeah. So in this case, you are not responsible for the action. It was supposed to happen. You are going to die. That's what it is. Text 4.
अहं त्वम् इति अपार्थाधीर् अज्ञानात् पुरुषस्य हि स्वाप्नि वा भक्ति अतज्ञानात् यायाबन्धा विपर्ययौ.
Misidentification of oneself and others as I and you on the basis of bodily concept of life is a product of ignorance. This bodily concept is the cause of repeated birth and death, and it makes us go on continuously in material existence. So he's saying same thing as Manu also said, don't identify with the body. If you do identify with the body, then these problems keep happening and we don't know what to do. Okay? So one instead of identifying with the body, one should just do some service for the Supreme Lord. As soon as the living entity thinks that he is independent, his conditional material existence begins, Prabhupada says. The conception of independent existence is therefore like a dream. One has to be in Krishna consciousness, his original position. Then he can be freed from material bondage. Okay. So that's interesting. Huh? We are not independent. We are always dependent on Krishna. Okay. And when we are dependent on Krishna, then we are independent enough to
So,
be happy serving Krishna. So interesting. Text by
तद्गच्छध्रुवभद्रं ते भगवतम् अधोक्षजम् सर्वभूतात्मभवेन सर्वभूतात्मविग्रहम्.
My dear Dhruva, come forward. May the Lord always grace you with good fortune, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is beyond our sensory perception, is the super soul of all living entities, and thus all entities are one, without distinction. Begin therefore to render service unto the transcendental form of the Lord, who is the ultimate shelter of all living entities.
Kubera is more advanced than Dhruva Maharaj.
Hmm?
More advanced than Dhruva Maharaj?
Why are you saying?
Because he is instructing him.
He is senior, no?
Age-wise or even advanced?
Position-wise, he is a brother of Lord Shiva.
No, but advancement-wise, he is pure devotee, like Dhruva Maharaj.
Dhruva Maharaj is pure, but he is now covered, na?
Okay.
At this moment. But still, he is in terms, nothing wrong because he is still senior, right? Kubera, so he is instructing him in the science also. So as long as somebody can, without, I don't think there's any like Maryada position is like that. It's not like that. Just like even though Uddhava was more advanced than Vidura, he refused to instruct him. Yeah. So rather he told him to go to Maitreya. So that would seem easier, better. Huh? Yeah. So that Maryada has to be followed. So here again, when Dhruva knows that this person is the lord of that region, Alakapuri. Yeah. So then, therefore, he's coming out, so he's receiving him in a humble way. And anyway, devotees are always humble, and they don't mind taking instruction from even a junior person also. But obviously, you can see he's not like he doesn't know the philosophy. He knows the philosophy, and so he's also giving him the same instruction as Swayambhu Manu, So yeah. Okay. Let's continue. 6.
भजस्व भजनीयाङ्घ्रिम् अभवाय भवच्छिदम् युक्तं विरहितं सक्षक्त्या गुणमय्यात्ममायया.
Engage yourself fully, therefore, in the devotional service of the Lord, for only He can deliver us from this entanglement of materialistic existence. Although the Lord is attached to His material potency, He is aloof from her activities. Everything in this material world is happening by the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Basically, it is Achintya Shakti that's working here. All the potency that is within this material world, how is it working? The Lord is overseeing it, but He is not directly in touch. It is through His various potencies, and even the material nature is also one of His potencies. So here He says, in the same way, He is saying, you please worship this personality of Godhead. He is the only one who can entangle all of us from these difficulties that we go through in this material world. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, towards the middle, that this means that the Lord, in order to show special favor to the devotee, directs the devotee from within in such a way that ultimately he is delivered from the entanglement of material existence. Okay. You don't have to do anything different. All you have to do is serve the Lord. and He will direct us to get out of our entanglement. The material energy is a manifestation of one of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's varieties of potencies. This material energy is one of the Lord's potencies, as much as heat and light are potencies of fire. So He also says in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Devi Esha Gunamai. It's also His divine energy. Okay. Having said that, He has nothing to do with the material energy in any case. Okay. It is set up for the purposes that He Supreme Will, He and the material energy understands what this will is. Okay. So it acts on that will. How it acts? Achintya Shakti. So therefore Prabhupada says, the Lord is aloof from this material energy. But when the same living entity engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, then he becomes attached to this service. This situation is called yuktam, which means he is connecting. For devotees, the Lord is present even in the material energy. This is the inconceivable potency of the Lord. Material energy acts in the three modes of material qualities which produce the action-reaction of material existence. Those who are not devotees become involved in such activities, whereas devotees who are dovetail with the Supreme Personality of Godhead are freed from such action and reaction of the material energy. So anytime you deal with material energy without Krishna, there is something you are going to take. Right?
Take means for qualities. Karma.
Yeah, reactions.
Reactions.
You will take or give. Take. Anytime when there's no Krishna involved. But if you are a devotee and you're doing it as a service, then somehow or other the energy doesn't touch you. And that's why Prabhupada says this is the inconceivable potency of the Lord. So for the devotees, even though they're in the material world, they're not actually getting any reactions. That's why you need to have transcendental knowledge, because it is like fire that burns the firewood, the blazing fire of knowledge, right? And it burns
all the reactions
of the material activities. Okay, that is the reason. Okay, so the same thing is said in this particular thing. Material qualities can produce all kinds of things, reactions, positive or negatives. We don't want either, because it is binding. Yeah. So the Lord is therefore described herewith as Bhava Chiddam, one who can give deliverance from the entanglement of material existence. Text 7.
Vrinihi kamam nripayan manogatam mattastvama autthanapade vishankitah varam vararhom bhujanabhapadayor anantaram tvam vayamanga shushruma.
My dear Dhruva Maharaj, son of Maharaja Uttanapada, we have heard that you are constantly engaged in transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known for his lotus navel. You are therefore worthy to take all benedictions from us. Please therefore ask without hesitation whatever benediction you want from me. You can again say, right, why he can give blessing to a pure devotee. But that's how it is. He doesn't need any benediction, because he's already got
The blessing of
yes, he's already got pure devotional service. So in the purport, Srila Bilva Mangal Thakur stated, therefore, that for persons who engage in devotional service to the Lord, all material benedictions wait like maidservants. Mukti Devi is just waiting at the door of the devotee to offer liberation, or more than that, at any time. To be a devotee is therefore an exalted position. Simply by rendering transcendental loving service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can have all the benedictions of the world without separate endeavor. So it's interesting, he is asking what benediction you want, and he knows he won't ask for anything. Let's see what text it is. Because he's pure devotee, why would he ask any material thing? That's it.
Maitreya Uvacha Sarajarajena Varaya Chodito Dhruvo Mahabhagavato Mahamatihi Haro Savavre Chalitam Smritim Yaya Taratya Yat Tarati ayatnena dhuratyayam tamaha.
Great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, when thus asked to accept a benediction from Kuvera, the Yaksha Raja, king of the Yakshas, Dhruva Maharaj, that most elevated pure devotee who was an intelligent and thoughtful king, begged that he might have unflinching faith in and remembrance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for thus a person can cross over the ocean of nescience very easily, although it is very difficult for others to cross. So at one point he was fighting like really crazy, now he's like he doesn't want anything, he just wants faith in the Supreme Lord. So that's the amazing character of Dhruva Maharaj. Because he's a devotee. All his want is increase his devotion. Actually, so therefore you can see when he was killing the Yakshas, it wasn't because he wanted to show off or whatever. He just got temporarily angry and therefore it came out in that passion.
I think one more thing. Dhruva Maharaj always listening to Swayambhu Manu and Kuvera.
Yeah.
But you don't see any question answers here. Like from Dhruva Maharaj, just like Arjuna and Krishna, they had dialogues.
True, but then he already understood that he made a mistake.
So he keep listening clearly.
So he's humble. Like we might say, well, I did it because we will argue. No?
He's there, I know.
Yeah, you will tell and say, I know, I did it. Like, don't tell me. The point is, he realized he made a mistake, and it's acceptable to be getting chastised or whatever.
Yeah, and that's why I can see like so many verses. Dhruva Maharaj didn't say.
You want him to say something?
It's like inspiring.
Yeah. So the same thing, right? When sometimes your guru will ask you something and you give one answer, and your guru may not like the answer, he will say something and then you want to justify. So an intelligent disciple will say, yeah, I made a mistake, I'm sorry. That's it. And just shut up after that. Yeah? I've seen many times also when devotees will argue until the guru will shout at them, shut up and listen. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah? You've experienced?
Just like Harivilas Prabhu. Stop arguing and just listen.
Listen, yeah, exactly. Because our false ego doesn't want to agree that we made a mistake, and so we tend to come up with different answers and reasons. So yeah, this is the reason. He's a pure devotee anyway, he's Mahabhagavat, so he wants to accept the
mistake.
No, he's accepting
That he has done the
Responsibility.
Okay, he's accepting the what position?
Humble position.
Yeah.
Humble position, yeah.
He's accepting his position. Yes, I made a mistake. He's not asking for so many benedictions or material benediction. He doesn't need it. All he wants is remembrance of the Lord, devotion to the Lord. This is something he's praying. So whoever he sees who's in a higher position, he says, please give me faith and remembrance in the Supreme Lord. So he's saying faith also, unflinching faith. So again, these things, this Shraddha is very easily, people can easily lose it. So therefore here you also see, Achalitam, unflinching